The morning never truly began in the forest that remembers rain. Light seeped in like a sigh, soft and diffused through the mist that hung in layers among the ancient trees. Each droplet of moisture in the air seemed to carry a memory, and when the breeze stirred, it wasn't just the leaves that rustled, it was the past, the gentle echo of things once felt but long forgotten. A traveler, quiet and unhurried, stepped onto the forest's path. Their shoes pressed softly into moss so thick and plush it seemed to hum underfoot, a low and contented murmur that welcomed the weight of another wandering soul. The air smelled of old rain and wildflowers, of damp bark and dreams tucked beneath ferns. Above, silver-laced branches arched like cathedral ceilings, sheltering the traveler in a world held forever in hush. As they walked, the traveler noticed the leaves above shifting in slow spirals, not falling but drifting as if the forest's time had loosened its grip on gravity. The trees whispered, not in words, but in feelings, gentle impressions of warmth, of quiet joy, of tears that had watered roots long ago. Every tree had seen rain, but this forest had loved it. The rain was not just an event here. It was a companion, a song, a lullaby sung through bark and bough. The traveler paused at a tree with a trunk twisted like a soft braid, its bark pale and etched with faint patterns that shimmered when the mist moved. They reached out and rested a hand on the surface. It felt like skin warmed by memory, like the pages of a well-read book. A single droplet formed from the branches above, fell, and landed on the traveler's hand. It lingered, cool and slow, then slipped down as if reluctant to let go. The traveler smiled, not entirely sure why, and moved on. There was no map in the forest that remembers rain. Paths curved gently where they pleased, winding through undergrowth that glowed faintly with hues not found in waking life, blues tinged with lavender, greens that leaned toward silver. Mushrooms the size of teacups lined the edges of the path, their tops glistening with dew and tiny constellations of light. Occasionally, a bird would call out, but the sound was muffled and slow, like it too was remembering something from long ago. The traveler came to a clearing where the mist pooled in soft spirals, and in the center stood a figure, a woman made entirely of soft water and gentle wind, her form shifting with the breeze but always smiling. She raised a hand, palm upward, and the sky above responded with a low, melodic thunder, not threatening but soothing, like a drumbeat under a lullaby. "You've come," she said, though her lips didn't move. The sound was inside the traveler's chest, like a memory returning home. "We've been waiting for your steps." The traveler nodded, not needing to ask why or how. Here, everything made sense in the way dreams do, not with logic but with feeling. They stepped into the clearing, and the mist curled around them like a shawl, warm and cool all at once. The woman of water turned, drifting toward the far edge of the clearing where trees stood taller than towers and dripped with quiet moonlight. The traveler followed, each step pulling them deeper into the dream of the forest, where every raindrop held a story, and every root remembered a song. The deeper path awaited, winding toward places no map had drawn and no voice had spoken aloud in years. And still, the forest whispered, as if to say, "Rest. You are safe here." The woman moved like a breeze made visible, her form flickering gently with the rhythm of the forest. She did not speak again, but her presence conveyed calm, as if her existence soothed the air itself. The traveler followed in silence, footsteps muffled by moss and softened soil, each motion unhurried, as though time had stretched to allow for lingering. Around them, the trees grew denser and taller, their trunks impossibly wide, their bark etched with glimmering grooves that pulsed faintly with pale blue light. Some of them bore hollow spaces at the base, and from within those hollows, the traveler thought they heard faint lullabies, melodies woven of memory and mist, sung by voices that never fully formed. A bird-like creature with translucent wings flitted past, trailing a thread of golden mist. It circled once overhead, then disappeared into the canopy with barely a sound. The traveler tilted their head back to follow it, and the sky through the leaves shimmered with a kind of distant twilight, though no sun or moon could be seen. Only a soft glow, like the color of remembered light, remained above. As they moved deeper into the forest, the air changed. It became thicker, not heavy, but full, filled with a quiet fullness, like walking into a room where someone had just whispered your name. Ferns brushed gently against the traveler's sides, leaning slightly toward them, as if recognizing something familiar. The path split briefly at a fork, and the woman paused, though she gave no gesture. The traveler chose instinctively, turning left. The woman followed without hesitation, and the trees opened up into a meadow unlike any the traveler had seen. Rain hung in the air, not falling, but suspended, tiny droplets hovering in place like stars caught in a slow exhale. They sparkled in the dim light, each droplet holding a shifting image, a child laughing under a wide umbrella, a hand held out a window to catch a summer storm, the hush of a warm coat wrapped around someone long ago. The traveler stepped among them, and as they passed, the droplets drifted aside, gently clearing a space with no sound. "These are the memories of the rain," the woman's voice whispered again, though she still did not speak aloud. "It leaves them here, like gifts for those who walk slowly." The traveler reached out to touch one of the droplets, and it responded by humming softly. Not a sound, exactly, but a vibration felt in the fingertips and chest, like being reminded of a story once told during a dream. When the traveler lowered their hand, the droplet gently returned to its place. They continued walking through the suspended rain, deeper into the meadow, where the droplets became larger, some the size of lanterns, others as small as dust motes. Each one held its own quiet world. At the center of the meadow stood a tree unlike the others. Its bark was smooth like river stone and glowed faintly from within. Water flowed down its trunk in thin, sparkling rivulets, but the water never touched the ground. It evaporated into mist before it fell, becoming part of the fog that lingered around the traveler's feet. The woman approached it and placed a hand on the bark. "This is the remembering tree," she said softly into the traveler's thoughts. "It drinks only what the rain chooses to leave behind." The traveler stepped closer, laying a hand beside hers. The bark was cool, not wet, and pulsed gently beneath their palm. A sensation of calm spread through their arm and into their chest, as if the tree had reached into them, cradling their heart for just a moment. "It knows you're quiet," the woman whispered. "It keeps it safe here." A long silence followed, not empty, but full of listening. Then, the woman turned again and began to walk. The traveler followed, and behind them, the droplets of rain slowly resumed their gentle descent. The droplets touched the ground with no splash, simply merging with the moss as if returning home. The air shimmered faintly, and the light changed in subtle ways, not brighter, not darker, but deeper, as though each moment now held more space inside it. The forest narrowed again, and the path curved around a fallen tree covered in soft, luminous lichen. Tiny glowing insects blinked lazily in the undergrowth, moving in slow spirals like drifting embers from a dream. The traveler noticed how their own breath came slower now, more deeply, matching the rhythm of the forest. It wasn't that they had slowed down, it was that the world around them invited stillness, asked gently for quiet, and the traveler, in response, surrendered to its hush. A faint bell-like chime echoed in the distance, so soft it might have been imagined. But the woman turned her head slightly, as if listening, and nodded. "The bells remember where the rain has been," she said into the quiet space between them. "They ring not with sound, but with feeling." The traveler nodded, though they didn't fully understand, and yet the thought felt like something already known. As they moved farther into the woods, the trees became stranger, not unnatural, but ancient in a way that suggested they had grown not just from earth, but from thought, from dreams and slow emotion. Their bark was smooth and swirled with faint traces of color, like clouds reflected in a river. One tree had leaves like feathers. Another swayed gently though no wind moved. Beneath them, the forest floor changed, becoming soft with petals. They fell constantly from somewhere high above, never piling too thick, just enough to soften every step. Each petal was slightly warm, and when the traveler looked closely, they saw tiny symbols etched onto them. Nothing legible, but somehow familiar, as if meant to be read by the heart instead of the eyes. The woman paused at a large stone half covered in ivy. She brushed the leaves aside to reveal a pool, clear, still, nestled into the stone like it had always been there. "This is the pool of listening," she said. "It hears what the rain forgets." The traveler knelt beside it. The surface of the water didn't reflect their face but showed moving images. Shadows walking slowly, hands held in silence, a single candle flickering in a window. There was no fear in the visions, only longing, and something like peace. "Sometimes," the woman said gently, "the forest holds space for what we do not know we've lost." A soft wind stirred, and for a moment, it carried the scent of tea, warm wool, and rain-washed stones. The traveler closed their eyes. The silence was not empty, it was deep and kind. When they opened them again, the woman was walking, and the traveler stood to follow. Ahead, the trees thinned once more, and golden light poured in low and gentle, as though evening had arrived with no hurry. The ground sloped upward, and soon they came to a hill that rose like a sigh from the forest floor. The traveler climbed slowly, each step soft with layered moss and velvet petals. At the top was a bench, carved from living wood, its surface smooth and humming with warmth. The woman gestured for the traveler to sit. They did, and from this height, the forest stretched below them in misty waves, trees rolling out like the folds of a blanket, peaceful and endless. In the distance, a quiet rain began to fall, only a shimmer at first, then a steady hush. It moved like a curtain across the trees, slow and rhythmic, touching everything it passed with silver. "This is the remembering hour," the woman said. "The time when the forest listens most deeply." The traveler watched as the rain approached, and when it touched the hilltop, it did not soak them, only wrapped them in calm. The droplets kissed the traveler's cheeks and arms, each one carrying a gentle echo, a soft voice, a warm room, the hush of someone waiting in the dark with love in their silence. The woman turned to the traveler, her eyes clear pools of starlit water. "Let the forest carry what you no longer need," she said. "It will hold it gently, and let it fall as rain when you are ready to return." The traveler closed their eyes, and the rain fell quietly around them, soothing, soft, and endless. Time softened further as the rain fell, and though the traveler sat still upon the wooden bench, the forest seemed to move gently around them. Trees shifted in place like dream figures adjusting their shape, and the mist curled upward in slow ribbons, blurring the edges of everything until only the feeling of presence remained. The woman stood beside the traveler in silence, her form barely more than a suggestion now, like light through gauze. She raised her hand slowly, and a stream of small, glowing seeds rose from her palm and drifted into the air, carried by no wind, guided only by intention. They scattered above the forest like fireflies released into the dusk. "They will become rain later," she murmured, voice curling through the traveler's thoughts like silk. "They carry quiet with them." The traveler didn't speak, only watched as the seeds disappeared into the sky. Somewhere beneath the surface of the moment, something inside them relaxed, something long held, something heavy and unnamed. The rain continued to fall, but now it seemed to flow upward too, droplets rising just as often as they descended, like breath reversing itself, like dreams unforming and reforming again. The forest no longer held edges. It became a wide feeling, a slow awareness, as if everything were one breath drawn out into eternity. The traveler stood, and the woman began walking again. They followed her down the other side of the hill, into a grove where trees bent low with great age. Their limbs reached outward and downward, forming quiet alcoves where soft moss hummed with ancient warmth. Some of these alcoves held shapes, shadows resting against trunks, curled gently in sleep. None stirred, but the traveler sensed no danger. Only rest. Only pause. A nearby tree opened a slow eye in its trunk, a lidless, glowing gaze that blinked once and then closed again without fear. The woman turned to the traveler and held out a hand. "This way," she whispered. "There is a place that remembers you." They continued through the grove until the trees parted, revealing a low stone arch covered in hanging vines. Beneath the arch, the air shimmered like water, and stepping through it felt like walking into a held breath. On the other side was a clearing shaped like a circle carved by time. A single tree stood in the center, unlike any the traveler had seen. Its bark was silver, but not bright, more like moonlight reflected in a pool. Its leaves were soft and translucent, almost like wings, and the roots pulsed faintly, as though dreaming. Beneath the tree lay a small, open hollow, lined with moss and smooth stone. The woman gestured toward it. "This is the cradle," she said softly. "Here, the forest will keep your quiet." The traveler hesitated only a moment, then stepped into the hollow and lay down. The moss gave beneath them like a gentle exhale, molding to their shape, holding them without weight. Above, the tree's leaves rustled in a rhythm that echoed a distant lullaby, familiar and impossible. "Close your eyes," the woman said. "You don't have to sleep. Just rest where the rain remembers." The traveler let their eyes drift shut. The sounds of the forest faded to the softest hush, the gentle fall of distant rain, the hum of moss, the quiet heartbeat of the remembering tree. In that stillness, something deeper opened inside them. Not a memory, not a dream, but something older than either. A feeling of having been here before, long ago, perhaps in another form, or perhaps always. The forest whispered not in words, but in warmth. And the traveler listened, not with ears, but with their entire being. In the hollow beneath the silver tree, wrapped in mist and memory, they felt the world exhale. And they exhaled with it. The traveler did not know how long they lay in the cradle of moss. Time passed not in hours or moments but in the gentle shifting of air, the rhythmic sigh of leaves, and the soft memory of rain that pulsed like a heartbeat all around. The hollow beneath the silver tree felt like being held inside a memory too kind to fade. Above them, the leaves shimmered and swayed in slow, spiral patterns. They made no sound, but their motion stirred something gentle within the traveler, a sense of being known without needing to be seen, of being welcomed without question. Eventually, the woman's presence returned, though no footsteps marked her arrival. The traveler opened their eyes to find her seated nearby, hands folded in her lap, her form almost transparent now, as though she had become part of the air itself. "You've rested long enough for this part of the forest," she said. "But there is more it wishes to show you. If you'd like to go deeper." The traveler nodded without speaking. Words had grown unnecessary. They stood slowly, the moss releasing them with no resistance, as if it had never held them tightly in the first place. The silver tree above them gave a low, soft creak, a sound not of age but of contentment. As they stepped away from the hollow, the air around them shifted again, and the path that had not been there before began to form. It was not made of dirt or stone but of soft mist, curling forward like a ribbon rolling out just ahead. They followed it in silence, the woman drifting just ahead. The trees grew quieter here, not because they had fallen silent, but because their thoughts had deepened. Their trunks were smooth as porcelain, and their branches seemed to disappear into the mist above, blending into the sky. In the distance, a slow bell chimed again, and this time, the traveler felt it more than heard it. It rang gently through their chest, a reminder of something long buried but never truly gone. The path led to a wide circle of shallow pools, arranged like petals around an invisible center. Each pool reflected not the trees or the sky, but something else entirely. Some shimmered with soft images of places the traveler had forgotten, others with feelings they could not name but recognized in their bones. The woman walked between them without disturbing a ripple. She turned to the traveler. "These are the reflections of rain that fell when no one was watching," she said. "Each one carries a secret the forest kept safe." The traveler stepped to the edge of one pool and looked in. They saw a room lit by soft candlelight, a window fogged with steam, a figure curled in a chair with a book resting on their chest, breathing softly in sleep. The sight filled them with warmth and a deep ache, not of sorrow, but of something remembered too late. Another pool showed a quiet shore at dawn, where waves rolled slowly over smooth stones. A pair of shoes sat alone in the sand, and gulls circled far above, their cries distant and kind. The traveler moved from pool to pool, each one offering a different fragment, not of the traveler's life, perhaps, but of some collective dream, pieces of the rain's long memory stitched together in still water. Finally, they reached the center, where no pool waited. Instead, a low mound of glowing earth pulsed gently, as though breathing. The woman gestured to it. "This is the heart of this remembering," she said. "You may sit with it if you like. Or simply listen." The traveler knelt, resting both hands on the warm earth. As they did, the forest seemed to pause. Every sound, every movement, every breeze drew inward, and a single deep breath passed through the world. In that silence, the traveler heard it, a soft voice, not spoken, not imagined, but felt. It said only one thing: "You are not forgotten." And with that, the rain began to fall again. The rain fell with a hush so gentle it barely touched the skin. It seemed to fall sideways and upward as much as down, spiraling slowly through the thick, timeless air of the forest. The traveler remained by the glowing mound, palms resting lightly against its warmth, and let the feeling of the forest move through them like a lullaby passed between breaths. They could feel something deep beneath the earth, not in the way of roots or stone, but a vast, slow presence, a knowing that had no shape or edge. The woman stood quietly nearby, watching the rain drift. She said nothing, but the air around her shimmered with calm. After some time, or none at all, the traveler stood, and the two continued onward. There was no path now, only space opening before them, shaped by their motion and the forest's permission. The trees began to thin, and the ground grew softer underfoot, transforming into a velvety carpet of fog. Above, the sky changed again, not to night or day, but something in between. A soft glow radiated from the horizon in every direction, like starlight caught behind a veil of silver. Ahead, a small bridge arched over a stream so still it could have been glass. The bridge was made of woven branches and driftwood, yet it looked as though it had always been there, patiently waiting. The traveler stepped onto it, and the wood made no sound beneath their feet. As they crossed, they paused to look down at the water. Beneath the surface, instead of stones or fish, they saw drifting moments, memories that floated past like boats without sails. A child chasing bubbles through a garden of tall sunflowers. A cat curling on a windowsill beside a steaming mug. Someone wrapping another in a thick blanket by firelight. Each image drifted past and vanished beneath the far bank, dissolving like mist. On the other side of the bridge stood a grove of trees that seemed made entirely of rainfall. Their trunks were transparent, their limbs flowing like streams held in shape by memory. The leaves were droplets caught mid-fall, and when the wind stirred them, they chimed faintly, not like metal, but like rain striking empty air. The traveler walked among them slowly, breathing in the cool, comforting scent of water and silence. Beneath these trees, the world felt weightless. The forest no longer felt like a place, but a dream within a dream, the echo of a thought long whispered to the stars. In the center of the grove stood a single platform made of smooth stone, circular and low, with a spiral carved into its surface. The woman stopped at its edge and turned to the traveler. "You may rest here again," she said softly. "The spiral remembers your steps." The traveler stepped onto the platform, and as they did, they felt something beneath them shift, not physically, but deeply, as if the ground had remembered every moment that had ever passed upon it. They walked the spiral slowly, each step drawing them deeper inward, not in distance but in quiet. With every turn, the air grew gentler, the light softer, the space more forgiving. When they reached the center, they sat down and closed their eyes. In the hush that followed, a gentle rain began to fall again, but this time, it fell inside them, like a soft drizzle through the soul, washing gently over thoughts, fears, names, and edges. There was no story left to hold. Only stillness. Only presence. The spiral beneath them hummed faintly, as though singing back to the rain. And the forest, vast and timeless, exhaled once more. When the traveler opened their eyes again, the grove had changed, though nothing seemed to have moved. The rainfall trees shimmered with soft luminescence, their transparent limbs refracting the dim silver light into quiet rainbows that floated briefly in the mist before dissolving. The platform beneath the traveler's feet felt warmer now, as though it had accepted their weight, their presence, their quiet. The woman was still nearby, her figure more diffuse than before, as though she were becoming part of the forest itself. She extended a hand, and without words, the traveler stood and followed her once more. A new path emerged, narrow and winding, bordered on either side by low-growing bushes with leaves shaped like teardrops. These leaves glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the traveler's heartbeat. The deeper they went, the more the surroundings seemed to soften. The trees now leaned inward gently, their branches arching like cathedral vaults woven from fog. Strange, delicate flowers bloomed directly from the bark, pale blossoms that opened as the traveler passed and closed again behind them, as though the forest recognized and welcomed their passage. They entered a chamber made entirely of branches, an open dome held together by will and weather, draped in long strands of glistening moss. At the center was a table of smooth stone, and upon it, bowls filled with still water, feathers, and softly glowing stones. The woman moved to one side and gestured to the table. "These are offerings from the rain," she said. "It leaves behind what it cannot carry. You may take one if it speaks to you." The traveler stepped forward. The bowl of water shimmered as though holding a memory too delicate to name. The feathers were light as silence and glowed faintly, while the stones pulsed with slow warmth, like tiny hearts dreaming in sleep. The traveler reached for one of the feathers. As their fingers touched it, a rush of calm flowed up their arm, not overwhelming, but grounding, like the weight of a blanket in winter, like the sound of a voice saying, "You're not alone." They tucked the feather gently into their coat and nodded. The woman smiled, and the moss above them rustled with soft approval. Together, they continued along the path, which now sloped gently downward. A subtle hum filled the air. Not a sound, but a vibration, like being near a sleeping animal or a stream hidden beneath stone. The trees here bore droplets of rain upon their branches that never fell, suspended eternally in the moment just before release. The traveler paused to look at one and saw within it the soft image of their own face, not as they were now, but as they had been once, perhaps as a child, or as someone they had been in a dream. The image smiled back at them. The woman spoke again, this time slower. "The forest does not remember as people do. It remembers what you felt. What you left behind. What you whispered into your pillow." Her voice became quieter with each word, until it blended completely into the rustling of leaves. They reached the base of the slope, where a pool stretched out before them. It was vast, still, and covered in a thin mist. The trees reflected in its surface were soft and inverted, as though seen through half-closed eyes. At the water's edge stood a rowboat made of woven reeds and silver bark, gently bobbing in place though the water made no waves. The woman gestured again. "It's time for the drift," she said. "Let the forest carry you now." The traveler stepped into the boat and sat down. It rocked slightly, then stilled. The woman placed one hand on the side, and with the softest push, set it adrift. The boat moved without sound, gliding across the mirror-like surface of the pool as if drawn by the weight of dreams. The mist thickened around its edges, curling upward like pale breath rising from unseen lips. The traveler sat still, arms resting gently in their lap, the feather tucked safely against their chest. They did not steer, nor did they need to. The water knew the way. As the boat floated forward, the traveler noticed the reflection of the sky above. Though when they looked up, there was no sky, only a soft, endless silver haze. But within the reflection, stars appeared, faint and slow blinking, constellations forming and unforming in gentle rhythms. It was as if the pool carried a memory of the sky rather than the sky itself. Shapes moved in the mist along the shore, shadows of trees, of animals, of moments. A fox with eyes like small moons paused at the water's edge, then vanished into the underbrush. A figure carrying a lantern walked a trail that faded behind each step. Somewhere, a song drifted over the water, barely more than a breath, rising and falling like wind moving through tall grass. The traveler closed their eyes and let it surround them. It was a lullaby with no words, made of the forest's voice, the hush of falling rain, the heartbeat of distant thunder. It filled the space inside that had once held questions, worries, edges. When they opened their eyes again, the boat had reached a small island at the center of the pool. It was not large, only a patch of moss-covered ground, ringed by soft reeds and flowers that opened as the boat touched shore. The traveler stepped out, their feet sinking just slightly into the moss, which responded with warmth. In the center of the island stood a low, circular stone platform, and upon it rested a folded piece of cloth the color of storm clouds. The woman stood nearby once again, though the traveler had not seen her arrive. She was even more translucent now, her form barely held together by light. "This is the rain cloak," she said softly. "Woven from the forest's quiet. It remembers every drop that ever fell with love." The traveler stepped forward and lifted the cloth. It was impossibly light, and as it unfolded, it shimmered with memories, not images, but feelings. The quiet after a storm. The warmth of shelter. The gentle ache of longing turned into peace. They draped it around their shoulders. The cloak did not warm them in the way fire does, but in the way presence does. It made them feel whole. Seen. Held. "The rain has shared its memory with you," the woman continued. "And now, when you leave, you will carry a piece of this stillness with you." The traveler looked down at their hands. Small droplets shimmered on their skin, though no rain had fallen in some time. The woman smiled. "You have become part of the remembering." The island grew quieter. The mist thickened again, and the boat slowly drifted away on its own, vanishing into the haze. The traveler did not feel worry or loss. Only rest. They sat upon the moss beside the platform, the cloak pulled gently around their shoulders. Time folded softly inward, and the island became a breath held between the forest and the sky. The woman's form faded into the mist, her presence lingering like a lullaby echoing down a hallway. The traveler closed their eyes once more, and everything softened. The forest exhaled. The rain whispered. And the island held its silence like a cradle. The traveler drifted somewhere between sleep and stillness, where thoughts moved slowly and sensations blurred into one long, quiet feeling. The moss beneath them cradled their form, conforming to every curve like it had known them forever. The rain cloak shimmered with a soft, pulsing light, barely visible but deeply felt, a calm that wrapped around them like the forest's own breath. The sound of rain returned, but not as falling water. It was the memory of rain, the hush that follows it, the softness it leaves behind. In this state of restful awareness, the traveler became aware of something gentle unfolding nearby, a soft rustling, like pages turning in an invisible book. They opened their eyes slowly and saw a tree rising from the far edge of the island. It hadn't been there before. Or perhaps it had, and they simply hadn't noticed. Its trunk was slender, glowing faintly like the others, but from its branches hung shapes not seen elsewhere, long, silver ribbons, each twisting and moving as though caught in a breeze that came from within the tree itself. As the traveler approached, they saw that each ribbon held something faintly inscribed upon it. Not words exactly, but impressions, like watermarks left on paper after a letter had been written and erased. The traveler reached toward one of the ribbons, and as their fingers brushed it, a soft voice filled the air around them. It was their own voice, but distant, like an echo of something said while dreaming. "I just want to rest. I want to feel quiet again." The ribbon shimmered and twirled, then gently detached from the branch and drifted down into the traveler's hand. It dissolved there, leaving behind a warmth that bloomed in the chest and slowly spread outward. They touched another. A soft giggle echoed through the mist, perhaps from childhood, perhaps from someone they loved but had long forgotten. Another ribbon carried the sound of thunder, the safe kind that wraps you in blankets and lets you fall asleep to its rhythm. Each ribbon the traveler touched brought another feeling, another moment not lost, but kept. The tree did not seem to grow lighter with each release. Instead, it seemed to brighten, as if the act of remembering did not remove weight, but shared it. The traveler stepped back. The tree shimmered with a soft light, and its remaining ribbons twisted gently, as though waving farewell. A narrow path of stepping stones emerged from the moss, leading away from the island into the mist. The traveler followed. With each step, they felt the cloak shifting, adjusting to the shape of their breath. It held the echo of the ribbons now, the hush of the forest, and the memory of soft voices lost to time. The mist began to part ahead, revealing a grove they had not seen before. This one was filled with hanging lanterns, some swayed gently from branches, others floated just above the ground, glowing with dim, amber light. The traveler stepped among them, and each lantern responded with a low chime, like soft bells ringing from far away. A few floated closer, circling once before returning to their place, as though recognizing something familiar in the traveler. The woman reappeared at the edge of the grove, more silhouette than form now. "These are the lanterns of return," she said. "They guide those who are ready back toward waking. But only if you choose." The traveler looked around, letting the lantern's glow wash over them. There was no urgency. Only invitation. The forest held no fences, only openings, only veils. The traveler nodded once. They weren't ready just yet, but they were near. And the lanterns understood. The lanterns began to drift in a slow spiral, rising like sleep-laden fireflies. Their glow deepened, shifting from amber to a soft blue, then to silver, mirroring the light that had always lived between the trees. As they floated, they hummed in gentle harmony, like a lullaby without words. The traveler stepped further into the grove, the moss beneath their feet cool and welcoming. The cloak whispered with every movement, brushing against their legs like low-hanging mist. In the center of the grove stood a still pool, small and perfectly round, its surface as smooth as untouched glass. The traveler approached and looked down. Their reflection did not show the face they wore, but instead flickered through many forms: child, wanderer, listener, storm, stillness. Each one smiled softly, then faded into the next. It was not unsettling, but deeply peaceful, like watching chapters of a story closing in slow succession. Across the pool, a figure appeared. It was not the woman from before, but someone else, familiar yet impossible to name. Their features were undefined, dreamlike, shifting slightly each moment. They held no expression, but their presence radiated a kindness beyond language. "This is the water that sees," the figure said, their voice like wind through a hollow log. "Not what you were or will be. Only what has rested within you all along." The traveler nodded. They knelt beside the pool and touched the surface with 2 fingers. A ripple passed outward, then returned, entering them as a warmth beneath the ribs. In that moment, the traveler remembered something they had never truly forgotten: the sound of rain as comfort, the scent of earth after sorrow, the silence that remains when love has done its work. The figure across the pool bowed slowly, then faded like a thought at the edge of waking. The lanterns dimmed, forming a path of light leading out of the grove. The traveler followed, each step easing them deeper into peace. As the trees grew taller around them, they noticed that the air now shimmered faintly, as if filled with dust from a dream long past. Leaves overhead moved in slow motion, barely rustling. Somewhere distant, a bell rang once, clear and low, like a heartbeat spread across sky. The traveler entered a clearing lit entirely by reflection: no sun, no moon, only the soft gleam of memory on bark and moss. In the center stood a simple bench made of pale stone, wrapped in ivy that glowed faintly silver. They sat without needing to think. Everything within and around them hushed. The rain cloak adjusted again, the feather inside pulsing gently, a small heartbeat of the forest itself. The traveler closed their eyes, and in the quiet that followed, the entire forest seemed to lean in closer, not with urgency, but with care. Something ancient and kind placed a hand, not physical, but deeply felt, on their shoulder. And for the first time in forever, the traveler felt not like a visitor, but like someone returning. A breeze passed through the clearing, lifting a few fallen leaves into a slow spiral. The bench grew warmer beneath them. The moss pulsed beneath their feet. The forest was remembering them, even as they remembered it. There was no need to speak. The moment did not require words. Only presence. And the traveler, wrapped in rain and rooted quiet, gave the forest their full attention. As the traveler sat in silence, the clearing seemed to breathe around them. The ivy along the stone bench shifted gently, not from any wind, but as if stretching in comfort. Overhead, the canopy shimmered with a faint silver mist, and the leaves held the glint of distant stars. A low, melodic sound began to emerge from the edge of the woods. Not a song exactly, but a soft threading of tones that felt like something remembered from long ago, a lullaby once hummed near a window on a rainy night. The traveler stood slowly, drawn toward the source. The path ahead was narrow and winding, its edges blurred with blooming moss and delicate fungi that pulsed faintly like breathing. As they walked, the forest deepened in hue, the green of the leaves darkening into indigo and violet, touched with glimmers of light that flickered like fireflies lost in thought. Ahead, nestled beneath a great tree whose trunk was braided with vines of light, stood a doorway with no walls. It was an arch made of living branches, wrapped in soft, glowing leaves that rustled even without wind. The traveler paused before it. On the ground before the arch was a small, shallow bowl carved of river stone. Inside it lay droplets of rain, perfectly still. The woman's voice returned, though she was nowhere to be seen. To step through is not to leave, but to return with new eyes, she said. Drink, and let the forest share what it has held for you. The traveler knelt beside the bowl and lifted it gently. The water inside tasted like the first sip after a long journey, cool, vibrant, and filled with something unspoken. As it passed down their throat, the cloak warmed, and the feather at their chest fluttered once, like a heartbeat. Images flowed into their mind, not memories, but sensations. The feel of standing barefoot in mud. The scent of pine in the early morning. The quiet thrill of opening a book whose first page you've forgotten. These were not personal memories, but shared ones, borrowed from the forest itself. The traveler rose and stepped through the arch. On the other side, the forest opened into a glade filled with soft, drifting petals. They floated through the air in slow spirals, glowing faintly with every turn. The ground here was made of woven roots, crisscrossed and padded by years of fallen leaves. In the center stood a tall structure, not a house or a tower, but something in between, shaped like a curled shell or a wind-sculpted stone. Its surface shimmered with rain-streaked patterns that moved slowly, always shifting. The traveler approached the entrance and found no door, only an opening shaped like a sigh. Inside, it was cool and dim, the air rich with the scent of earth and water and old wood. The walls curved gently, lined with shelves that held not books, but folded dreams. Each was a small bundle wrapped in silver thread, pulsing softly with an inner light. The traveler ran a hand over them, and each bundle responded with a small, soothing warmth. One loosened and fell open at their touch, revealing a single moment, a pair of hands catching rain in cupped palms, then laughing as the drops overflowed. The traveler smiled. They understood. This place held the dreams left behind by others who had walked through the forest, each one kept safely, not forgotten, only resting. They sat in the center of the room, surrounded by the quiet shimmer of other people's softness. And for a long moment, they simply breathed. Time within the shell house stretched and softened, curling inward like the petals of a flower closing for the night. The travelers sat still, their breath syncing with the slow rhythm of the forest's pulse, the dreams around them rising and falling with a quiet harmony. The folded dream bundles hummed faintly, and though no voices spoke aloud, the traveler could feel the presence of many others. Kind souls who had passed through the forest before, who had rested here, unburdened, and left their dreams to be cared for. A subtle warmth drifted down from above, like sunlight diffused through deep water. Looking upward, the traveler saw the curved ceiling ripple, displaying the image of a tree canopy gently swaying in wind that could not be felt. From this living ceiling, a single droplet of water formed and fell, landing on the traveler's forehead with a touch so light it felt imagined. Instantly, a soft memory surfaced, not a moment from their own life, but one gifted by the forest. In this memory, they were lying beneath a different tree, on a different day, with someone whose face was blurred by joy. The two of them shared laughter without words, and the light through the leaves was golden and slow. It passed like a breeze, and the traveler blinked it away with gratitude. They stood and moved once more through the open doorway of the shell, returning to the petal glade. The petals were still falling, weightless and without hurry, each one landing like a sigh upon the earth. The traveler looked back at the archway they had come through, now faint and distant behind a soft mist. Ahead, a new path had appeared, this one lined with tall ferns that bowed inward, forming a gentle corridor. As they stepped into it, the traveler felt the change immediately. The air was cooler, and the sound of dripping water echoed lightly through the ferns. It was not rain but the memory of rain, suspended in time. The traveler passed beneath arched branches woven with tiny bells, bells not made of metal, but of crystallized sap, their chime faint and beautiful, as though each note held a wish. At the end of the corridor was a pool, not like the mirror-still ones before, but alive with small ripples, each one glowing softly as it moved. Surrounding the pool were dozens of stones, each flat and wide, etched with spiral patterns that shifted gently as the traveler approached. One stone rose slightly from the others, lifting just enough to form a seat. The traveler lowered themselves onto it, and the pool responded, brightening until it cast soft reflections across the trees. From within the ripples, images began to form, not of people or places, but of emotions. Calm, joy, sorrow, wonder. Each emerged from the water like smoke, rising and dancing in slow shapes before dissolving back into the ripples. The traveler watched, feeling no need to name them, only to feel. When a shape of longing rose, delicate and aching, they did not shy away. They let it rise, shimmer, and fade like the others. And as it passed, something within the traveler eased. The pool stilled again. One final ripple moved across its surface and broke into 1,000 tiny lights that floated upward, mingling with the petals still drifting down. The traveler stood and bowed gently toward the pool. They had no words for what it had shared, but the feeling would remain. It had become part of their stillness now, part of the way their footsteps touched the forest floor. The traveler followed the lights as they drifted upward, drawn by a quiet current through the trees. They moved slowly, like memories remembered just before sleep, soft and glowing. As the traveler walked beneath them, the forest grew brighter, not with sunlight, but with a silvery blue shimmer that clung to every branch, every leaf, every breath of air. The sound of distant chimes returned, but now it came from above, as though the sky itself had learned to sing. The path ahead widened, leading to a grove unlike any they had yet seen. The trees here stood in a perfect circle, each with bark so smooth it seemed woven from silk. Between the trees hung delicate curtains of mist, gently swaying even without wind. In the center of the grove stood a structure made entirely of rain. It shimmered and held its shape as though it were solid, though it constantly shifted, each droplet holding perfectly in place before vanishing and returning. It was a doorway, and it breathed. The traveler stepped closer, and the cloak they wore responded, drawing tighter in gentle anticipation. The feather at their chest pulsed 3 times, then grew still. From within the rain doorway, a voice emerged. It was not loud, nor did it speak in words. Instead, it communicated in sensation, in the cool brush of mist on the cheek, in the distant memory of stepping barefoot onto wet stone, in the comfort of being known without explanation. The traveler understood. This was a gate not to another place, but to a moment, the moment where the forest met the traveler fully, and gently asked them to be still. They stepped into the rain doorway, and it passed through them like breath. Inside was a hollow space filled with quiet light. There were no walls, only presence. All sound fell away, save for the rhythm of water falling, not from clouds, but from memory. The traveler stood in this quiet, and the cloak began to dissolve, thread by thread, not unraveling, but transforming into droplets that floated and spun. The feather remained, suspended in the air before them, gently glowing. The traveler reached out, and as their fingers touched it, they felt the entirety of the forest at once, its breath, its stillness, its endless patience. They saw roots wrapped around the bones of forgotten thoughts, saw branches stretching toward stars that no longer burned, saw moss growing over the footsteps of ancient dreams. They saw themselves, too, not as a single person, but as part of this vast dreaming body, remembered and held and always returning. The feather slowly drifted down and settled into the traveler's palm. As it did, the space around them began to open. The rain parted like a curtain, revealing the grove once more, but now it shimmered brighter, as if it had exhaled. The traveler stepped back into the grove. Where once there was silence, now there was music, subtle, winding, like the echo of a lullaby remembered in sleep. The trees seemed taller now, not because they had grown, but because the traveler now saw them more clearly. Their trunks held stories, their leaves whispered names, their shadows curved like hands. The traveler took a deep breath and found their own heartbeat echoing back from the woods around them, not louder, but deeper. They were no longer moving through the forest. They were part of its breath, part of its remembering. The path no longer stretched ahead in a line, but spiraled outward like the inside of a seashell, gently guiding the traveler along its curve. Each step now felt weightless, as if the ground rose to meet their feet rather than being pressed beneath them. Around them, the trees whispered without language, their rustling leaves carrying echoes of old laughter, quiet weeping, and the hush of deep wonder. Flowers bloomed in their wake, not from seeds, but from memory, their petals forming from past rain and distant stars. The traveler came to a small rise, a gentle hill covered in soft moss that held no footsteps, though many had surely passed this way before. At its center stood a tree unlike any they had seen so far. Its trunk was pale as moonlight and smooth as water-polished stone. From its branches hung long strands of silver leaves, each one shaped like a teardrop, each catching the light and singing a faint tone when stirred. The tree's roots did not sink into the earth, but rested atop it, coiled in quiet circles, as though listening. The traveler approached and placed a hand on the bark. It was warm. Not the warmth of fire, but the warmth of closeness. Of a hand held, of a memory shared without needing to be spoken aloud. A ripple passed through the forest then, like a deep inhale. All at once, the leaves above shimmered, the mist around the trees thickened, and the light bent softly, forming gentle rings that expanded outward. The traveler sat at the base of the tree, and as they did, a hollow opened in the trunk, revealing a smooth, stone basin filled with water so clear it seemed invisible. The water reflected not the traveler's face, but the sky overhead, filled with clouds that slowly drifted and changed into scenes. They saw a child holding out their arms in a storm, laughing as the rain soaked their clothes. They saw an old woman placing a single pebble on a stone path, her eyes full of peace. They saw a figure sitting beneath this very tree, many seasons ago, humming a tune that bent the wind. The traveler watched, and the tree gently leaned in, as if listening to their thoughts in return. A single silver leaf drifted down from a high branch and landed beside them. Without hesitation, they picked it up. It dissolved into a soft glow that entered their chest and settled in their heart, not heavy, but grounding. The forest fell still again, as if holding its breath. In that stillness, the traveler understood, this forest did not just remember rain. It remembered all who had passed through it, all their quiet hopes, their resting dreams, their longings, and release. It remembered without judgment, without holding tight. It cradled these things as one might cradle a sleeping bird, letting them go when the time came. And now, the traveler was part of that remembering. They stood, changed not in shape but in softness. As they turned away from the tree, the spiral path shifted once more, not forward, but inward. It led not away from the forest, but deeper into its knowing. The traveler followed, heart full of silver light and footsteps barely touching the moss. Somewhere ahead, water sang beneath stones. And far above, the sky prepared to rain again, not with sorrow, but with stories. The forest narrowed into a quiet hollow, where soft rain never truly stopped falling. It was not a rain that drenched or chilled, but a misty veil that carried the hush of 1,000 slumbering thoughts. Each drop landed with the softness of a breath, the weight of a memory that had already forgiven itself. The traveler walked slowly, letting the rain pass through them, neither resisting nor seeking. The path beneath their feet was formed of dark, smooth stones laid in a winding pattern like the flow of a river dreaming. Tiny plants grew between the stones, their leaves translucent, glowing faintly from within. As the traveler walked, they noticed that the droplets of rain were pausing midair, hovering for a heartbeat before continuing their descent, as if savoring the act of falling. A clearing appeared, edged with tall reeds that bent inward like listeners leaning close. In the center was a pond so still it seemed made of glass. Upon its surface floated dozens of small lanterns, each one lit from within by a blue flame no larger than a dandelion seed. The flames did not flicker. They pulsed gently, as though breathing in time with the forest. The traveler stepped to the edge and knelt. Their reflection was there, but not as they expected. Not a mirror image, but a dream version of themselves, eyes closed, a soft smile just touching the lips, as if caught in a moment of deep peace. The water shifted, and the dream self opened its eyes, meeting the traveler's gaze. There was no fear, no surprise. Only understanding. The dream self raised a hand slowly, and from its palm emerged a droplet of light. It floated upward and passed through the surface of the pond, into the traveler's waiting hand. It was warm. It pulsed once, twice, then dissolved into their skin, leaving behind the echo of a feeling too large to name. Behind them, a new sound began. A chorus, not voices, but the layered song of wind, water, leaves, and something else, something like time unraveling, gently, into stillness. The traveler stood and followed the sound. It led them along a trail that seemed woven from moonlight itself, silver and soft, bending without urgency through trees that now shimmered with dew like stars caught in their branches. They passed beneath arching limbs where owls watched with quiet eyes, past stone markers etched with patterns that shifted the longer they were looked upon. The path ended at a wide, open glade surrounded by trees that leaned together as though sharing a secret. In the center stood a tall structure made entirely of woven branches, leaves, and rain silk. It looked fragile, but it hummed with age. A door opened, and inside, there was only mist and music. The traveler entered without hesitation. The moment they stepped inside, the doorway vanished behind them. The structure dissolved into light, and the traveler stood in a space beyond shape or season. There was no ground, only the sense of being held. No sky, only an endless breath of calm. All sound melted into a single, low note that resonated through the traveler's bones and spirit alike. They felt their thoughts slow, then dissolve, leaving only presence. The forest had no need for memory here. It remembered for them. Time no longer passed in this space. It simply unfolded, like a petal opening endlessly, revealing layer upon layer of silence made visible. The traveler floated in this stillness, not upward or downward, but within. Around them, forms began to emerge. Not as shapes exactly, but as impressions. A circle of light formed beneath their feet, soft as moon glow on snow. Petals of mist curled outward from it, and as they did, the traveler felt themselves becoming lighter, not in body but in burden. Worry slipped away without resistance, like stones falling gently into deep water. Thoughts faded, not because they were forgotten, but because they no longer needed to be held so tightly. Within this space, there was a sense of witnessing. Of being seen by something older than age, something that had watched dreams rise and fall for countless nights, and loved them all equally. The traveler did not speak, but a question rose from their heart nonetheless: what am I meant to do now? The answer came not in words but in warmth. A gentle breeze, impossible within this sealed space, brushed against their face. The faint scent of earth after rain. The image of a door in the shape of a leaf, slowly unfolding. the traveler understood. There was nothing more to do. Only to be. To carry this stillness within, wherever they went. The forest did not ask for action, only presence. And in that presence, the world would begin to remember itself. Slowly, the space began to shift. The mist grew thinner, revealing the outline of trees once more. The light condensed, folding inward like the closing of a book after a well-loved chapter. The traveler stood now at the edge of the glade again, though the air shimmered faintly, as if the invisible still carried traces of the unseen. Behind them, the woven structure had vanished, leaving only a circle of stones where it once stood. At the center of the circle was a pool of rainwater, perfectly still. The traveler leaned over it and saw not their own reflection, but the forest's. Trees stretching into forever. Paths looping through mist. A sky hung with stars that blinked like distant eyes. They turned from the pool, and the path beneath their feet hummed gently. It was the same path as before, but now it moved with them, like a current flowing around their steps. The birds did not call. They sang, each note woven into the fabric of the air. The wind did not blow. It spoke in slow exhalations, like a lullaby remembered from a time before speech. And though the traveler was alone in form, they felt surrounded. By presence, by memory, by the gentle awareness of a forest that never forgot a single footstep. The rain began again, soft and warm. It did not soak or chill, but settled on the traveler's skin like quiet blessings. They did not hurry. There was no longer any need to reach a destination. Every moment was a return. Every step a kind of homecoming. As the traveler continued, the landscape began to soften into twilight colors, though the sun was nowhere in sight. The air itself seemed dyed in hues of violet, rose, and pale blue, as if evening had been painted onto every leaf, every stone, every breath. Shadows moved with grace, not darkness, gently trailing like companions rather than echoes. The trees here were taller, but not imposing. Their trunks curved gently, and some arched above to form cathedral-like passageways where petals floated down from invisible blossoms. The petals melted upon contact, becoming tiny sparks of warmth against the skin. Each one held a scent, rain on wood, old parchment, fresh moss, and something unnameable but familiar. The path widened into a grove where stones stood in careful rings, smooth and etched with looping patterns like rivers frozen in time. The traveler stepped between them and felt the ground hum faintly beneath their feet. A memory came, not their own, but one the forest shared. A circle of voices, soft and layered, singing beneath the stars. A bowl of water passed hand to hand, reflecting faces lit from within. The feeling was not sadness or joy, but a kind of wholeness that needed no name. The traveler placed a hand on one of the stones. It pulsed gently. Not a message, but a connection, like a hand pressed through time to touch theirs. The sky above was beginning to show stars, not as pinpricks of light, but as drifting lanterns, slowly spinning. Some fell in slow arcs, not extinguishing but joining the earth with a whisper. The traveler moved on, their pace even slower now, each step an act of listening. In a grove where the trees bowed low and the ground was thick with clover, they came upon a pool of fog. Not water, not air. just a soft, thick mist resting like a sleeping creature. They knelt and brushed their fingers through it. The fog parted briefly to reveal images, flickers of lives long past. A child placing a flower on a windowsill, an elder writing a single word on a piece of bark and placing it into the river, a pair of hands weaving long strands of grass into a crown. Each image was brief, but full of stillness. The fog closed again, and the traveler stood. Somewhere nearby, a bell sounded, a single, low tone that rang without direction, yet filled the entire forest. The trees responded. Leaves shimmered. The ground exhaled. A gentle hush fell over everything, not silence, but reverence. The traveler stepped forward, and the sound of the bell lingered inside them. Not as an echo, but as a rhythm. The forest walked with them now, not around them. The line between self and world had blurred until it became something softer, belonging. The sky above began to shimmer with a faint glow, not of light, but of attention. As if the stars were leaning closer, curious, gentle, watching not to judge, but to remember. The traveler knew they were no longer just passing through this forest. They had become part of it. A thread woven into its dreaming. The traveler moved with the stillness of someone who no longer questioned the path. Around them, the forest unfolded like a memory returning slowly, familiar yet forever strange. The air was cool, but not cold, scented with lichen, distant rain, and the faint sweetness of something blooming out of season. They passed beneath a canopy so thick with silver-veined leaves that it dimmed the world into something like moonlight, even though no moon could be seen. The light here did not come from above but seemed to emerge from the spaces between things, from the hush, from the spaces where breath met thought. Small lights drifted through the underbrush, fireflies perhaps, or gentle spirits of the trees. Some hovered near the traveler's hands as if curious. They did not touch but offered a quiet companionship. The path led them to a clearing where the earth rose gently into a hill crowned by a single tree, enormous and ancient, its trunk wide enough to hold silence itself. Its roots sprawled outward like the hands of time, holding the soil in a calm embrace. The tree's bark was pale, etched with fine lines that shimmered faintly when the traveler looked directly at them, then faded when they looked away. At the base of the tree was a small opening, not quite a door, not quite a cave. Just a space where the tree's presence had made room for quiet. The traveler stepped into it, ducking slightly. Inside, the space opened into a chamber of smooth wood, its walls curved and breathing with warmth. The air inside was filled with a hum, not mechanical, not magical, but organic, like the slow vibration of life being deeply at ease. In the center of the chamber sat a pool of still water. It reflected nothing. No light. No image. Only the sensation of depth. The traveler knelt beside it, and without thinking, placed a hand upon the surface. The water accepted the touch, and from it rose a soft wave of memory, not of events, but of feelings, the way the rain had felt on their skin that morning, the curve of the first path, the hush of the fog, the sound of the silent bell. It all returned, not as narrative, but as presence. Around the chamber, the wooden walls pulsed once, then again, as if acknowledging this offering of stillness. The traveler understood. They were not here to find anything. They were here to be found. The pool brightened slightly, and within it now showed an image, not of the traveler, but of the forest, viewed as if from within a dream. It was not a map. It was a heartbeat. The trees, the paths, the rains, all beating slowly, gently, in time. And the traveler's pulse matched it, a perfect rhythm. The pool calmed again, returning to stillness, and the chamber dimmed. A doorway appeared opposite the entrance, narrow and tall, framed by vines that shimmered with dew. The traveler stood and passed through it without fear. On the other side, the forest waited, not the same, but not different. Just deeper, quieter, more certain. The rain had paused. Or perhaps it was listening. The forest beyond the doorway breathed with a slowness so profound it seemed to shape the traveler's own rhythm. Each step they took was met by a hush of wind that curled around their ankles like a cat returning home. The trees here leaned inward, not in warning, but in welcome. Their trunks bore marks of old seasons, rings of light and dark, smooth knots like closed eyes, and scars that had healed into shapes resembling runes. Beneath their roots, faint glimmers of water traced patterns that felt like stories. The traveler did not try to understand them. They simply walked, listening. A soft sound followed, the faint rustle of something not quite wind, not quite voice. Ahead, a small stream crossed the path, clear and impossibly still. Though it moved, it made no sound. The surface was glass, reflecting not just the canopy above but a night sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. The stars in the reflection twinkled, even though it was day. The traveler knelt by the water and touched it gently. Ripples expanded across the mirrored sky, and for a moment, the water pulled them into a vision. Not a dream, not memory, just a place between. In it, the traveler saw themselves standing beneath rain, arms open. The rain fell upward, becoming blossoms that dissolved into birds, which sang no notes, only silence. The vision faded, and the stream returned to clarity. The traveler stepped across without disturbing it. The forest on the other side felt lighter, not in brightness, but in weight. Here, the trees gave way to gentle hills covered in soft moss that glowed with a faint inner light. The path became indistinct, more suggestion than line. But the traveler knew where to go. It was not about direction, but attention. In the distance, a soft ringing began, like glass being gently tapped. It came not from one place, but everywhere. The traveler followed it, or perhaps allowed it to guide them. Soon they arrived at a grove unlike any before. No trees grew here, only tall grass that moved in spirals, as though brushed by invisible hands. In the center stood a pedestal of stone, shaped like an open palm. Upon it lay a single droplet of rain, unmoving, suspended in a moment that never ended. The traveler approached and felt a sensation of deep memory, not theirs, but the forest's. A time before names, before paths, before stories. The droplet pulsed softly, and the air around it shimmered. Without touching it, the traveler leaned closer. The droplet held an entire storm within it, clouds, wind, light, and the hush that follows. It was rain remembered, not as weather, but as being. The pedestal vibrated faintly, and the traveler felt their breath match it. The grove became utterly still. Not empty. full, overflowing with the quiet presence of everything that had ever listened. The traveler stepped back. The droplet remained. Unfallen. Unforgotten. They continued walking, the grass parting ahead and closing behind. Night was not coming, but something like it. A dream shadow, soft and vast, falling gently across the land. And the traveler, now more still than motion, walked deeper into it, becoming part of the hush that waited with the trees. The hush deepened as the traveler moved through it, not silencing the world, but softening it. Each sound, whined through reeds, a branch settling, the breath of unseen creatures, was stretched into something gentle, elongated, like threads of melody drifting through still air. The trees began to space themselves wider apart, and the ground took on a silvery hue, as though lit from beneath by the dreams of stones. Above, the sky was layered in shifting veils of light. Pale rose, deep indigo, and something like pearl, blending without boundary. It no longer mattered what time it was. The forest no longer held to hours. In a quiet glade, a figure stood waiting. They were neither young nor old, neither solid nor transparent, simply present in a way that made the air lean toward them. Their robe was woven of forest dusk, and their eyes held reflections of rain falling on leaves. The traveler approached without speaking, for there was no need. The figure offered a small bundle wrapped in moss and spider silk. Within it, a single seed pulsed with warmth. The traveler took it with both hands, feeling its rhythm match their own. "This is the remembering," the figure said, though their mouth did not move. "Not of what has passed, but of what still listens." Then the figure turned and vanished into the trees, leaving no trail, no sound. The traveler held the seed to their heart. It was not heavy. It was not light. It simply was. They continued through the glade and into a field where long grasses bent toward them, brushing against their legs like the hands of old friends. Flowers bloomed in slow motion, opening as they passed, their petals humming faint notes only barely audible. The path led to a hollow where the earth had formed a wide nest of stone and root. In the center, a shallow pool shimmered, not with water, but with memory. The traveler knelt and planted the seed in the heart of it. No soil. No ritual. Just trust. The seed sank without resistance, and the pool brightened. Around its edge, the stones glowed softly, revealing carvings long worn by wind and time, swirls, spirals, the pattern of rainfall as it dances on still water. The traveler sat beside the pool, and the forest sat with them. For a long time, nothing moved, and everything breathed. Then, slowly, from the center of the pool, a tendril of green unfurled. A sprout. It shimmered faintly, dew-forming instantly along its stem. The traveler smiled, not as a reaction, but as a becoming. The forest exhaled. Far in the distance, rain began to fall again, soft, rhythmic, as though the sky had remembered a lullaby it had once whispered to the trees. The drops were slow, golden, and quiet. The traveler lay down beside the pool, their bodies sinking slightly into the moss, as if welcomed home by the earth. Overhead, the sky brightened with stars, but not the ones known by name. These stars were dreams that had taken root and risen. And as the rain fell gently, the forest remembered. every leaf, every hush, every traveler who had ever listened. The rain continued through the night that wasn't quite night, a lullaby falling from the sky in a rhythm that asked nothing, promised everything, and held time like a cradle. The traveler did not sleep, nor did they remain entirely awake. They drifted within the in-between, a place where dreams folded into one another like petals closing at dusk. Around them, the moss thickened, glowing faintly with each drop that touched it. The pool beside them grew still again, its center reflecting not the sky, but a slow unfurling spiral of light that reached both inward and out. From the place where the seed had been planted, the sprout grew taller. It did not race toward the sky but moved at the pace of breath, of thought without words. Leaves opened that looked like small hands, reaching not for anything, but simply reaching. The forest leaned closer. Trees, flowers, stones, and streams, all paused in their whispering to bear witness. Somewhere above the canopy, clouds drifted in circular patterns, drawn to the quiet below. Thunder, distant and soft as a drum buried in velvet, pulsed in harmony. The traveler rose slowly, knees brushing the moss, and stood beside the sapling. Their shadow stretched and folded into the earth, merging with the roots beneath. And the new tree, recognized them. Not by name or face, but by presence. The traveler placed their hands on the bark, still warm, still alive with memory. The touch sent a hush across the grove, and in that hush was a message, not spoken, not written, only known. The seed had been theirs all along. Carried through dreams and rain, through paths that curved without reason, through silences that held more truth than words ever could. They had not come to leave something behind, but to return what had always belonged to the forest. The rain slowed to a mist, clinging to every surface like breath on glass. The traveler stepped back and looked upward. The stars above shimmered, not far, not cold, but near, like lanterns hung in a canopy of velvet. A breeze passed through the trees, gentle and sure, and the branches moved not in chaos, but in dance. The forest, it seemed, was exhaling. Not an ending, not a farewell. Just a breath. The traveler turned and began walking again, not toward something, but within something. With every step, the ground behind them slowly faded, not erased, but remembered elsewhere. Paths folded gently into the roots of trees. Streams curled into silence. Leaves settled, golden and still. The traveler's shape softened at the edges, like fog meeting morning. By the time they reached the edge of the dreaming wood, they were no longer separate. They were part of the hush, of the slow remembering, of the breath between raindrops. And behind them, in the heart of the forest, the small tree grew steadily beneath a sky of gentle light. Its roots stretched wide. Its leaves whispered. And when the next traveler came, footsteps quiet, eyes full of sleep, they would hear it. A voice without sound. A welcome without words. The forest that remembers rain would remember them too. Always.